Okay, close your eyes for a sec. Picture this with us. World War I battlefields. You hear the mud squelching, the constant boom of artillery shaking everything.
Yeah.
And then there's that space, that awful torn up ground between the trenches. No man's land.
Mm-hmm. A place so terrible, one scholar described it. Well, it's chilling. Men drowning in shell holes already filled with decaying flesh.
Ugh. And wounded men just lying out there, sometimes for days. You could even hear them crying from the line sometimes.
And sappers, the tunnelers, just getting buried alive down there.
It wasn't like just a backdrop. It was an active nightmare.
Exactly. Designed to swallow you whole.
And so today, we're taking a deep dive into that infamous place, WWI's No Man's Land.
Right.
We'll definitely touch on the grim reality. We have to.
Yeah, absolutely.
But our main focus, it's this really fascinating, pretty dark legend that kind of bubbled up from all that horror.
Ah, okay. And to help us get a handle on this, the place and the stories, we've got a great source. It's an article from Smithsonian Magazine.
Yeah, it pulls together a lot, like historical accounts, soldier memoirs, even novels from the time. Gives us a real mix of perspectives.
Sounds good. So what's the plan?
Right. So our mission today is to unpack what No Man's Land actually was, the physical reality, what it felt like.
Okay.
And then really dig into this legend, these wild figures supposedly living there. Where did that story come from? What were the different scary versions?
And maybe why it mattered.
Yeah.
What it symbolized.
Exactly. We'll look at a totally different take on it, too, and
Yeah.
try to figure out what it all meant.
All right. Let's do it. So starting point, the reality. What was No Man's Land, physically? This place of, well, extreme danger.
Well, at its most basic, it was just the ground between the front lines. Could be narrow, maybe just tens of yards, or sometimes much wider.
But it wasn't just empty space.
Oh, no, not at all. It was engineered for death. Tangled barbed wire, hidden mines, endless shell craters, constantly raked by machine guns. A total death trap.
And it's important, I think, to remember, amidst all that horror, there were these tiny, almost unbelievable moments of humanity. Is that the right word?
But yeah, like the Christmas truce in 1914. That happened right in No Man's Land. Soldiers meeting in the middle. Crazy.
And sometimes these unofficial ceasefires, right, to go get the wounded.
Exactly. The source even mentions some guys sunbathing out there early on when things were quieter.
Sunbathing, that's bizarre.
Totally bizarre. Fleeting moments, though. Very fleeting.
Because the overwhelming reality, as you said, was just horror. Pure horror.
Yeah. Wilfred Owen, the poet, he was there. He called it like the face of the moon, chaotic, crater-ridden, uninhabitable, awful, the abode of madness.
Abode of madness. Wow. That phrase just, it captures it, doesn't it? The psychological toll.
It really does. And going back to that other description, men drowning in shell holes with bodies, the wounded crying for days, tunnelers buried alive.
It's just relentless, agonizing death made into a landscape.
Exactly. And the name itself, No Man's Land, it has a history too, right?
Yeah, the source points that out. The Oxford English Dictionary says No Man's Land goes back to Middle English, like 1350.
Really? What was it then?
Originally a specific spot outside London for executions. Grim from the start.
Huh.
Then it got a military meaning later, around 1864. But the source says it became especially prevalent in World War I. Made sense.
And it wasn't just English either.
No, the Germans had Nieman's Land, and the French actually just borrowed the English term, Le No Man's Land.
So you have this physical place, this blasted, deadly, traumatizing wasteland created by modern war.
Yeah.
And right out of that horror, a legend starts to grow.
Exactly. It's like the reality was so extreme, so dehumanizing,
Yeah.
that the mind needed something else.
Yeah.
Folklore, maybe?
Yeah. A story started doing the rounds, almost whispered, about these figures. People who weren't just crossing No Man's Land, but were like living there, or even underneath it.
Living in it. How?
Well, the core story was about these deserters, scar-faced, fearless guys. And what's really striking is they weren't just from one side. No, they were supposedly banded together from like everyone. Australians, Austrians, British, Canadians, French, Germans, Italians.
A real mixed bag. Interesting the source note specifically, none from the U.S. were mentioned in these tales.
Yeah, and they were meant to be living deep underground, old trenches, dugouts, making their own hidden world down there.
Wow. Okay. And I guess, like any good legend, it wasn't just one single story.
Exactly. The source mentions different versions. Some may be a bit less awful, just about survival. Others, truly terrifying, talking about like cannibalism, scavenging the dead,
Mhm.
really dark stuff.
Right. Okay. So this is where it starts getting really interesting. This wasn't just idle gossip, was it? It actually got written down.
Yeah, the source shows how it crept into memoirs, novels. Let's look at some of those specific accounts. They really bring the legend to life in a pretty gruesome way.
And it's worth mentioning Paul Fussell, the historian.
Yeah.
He called this the finest legend of the war.
Finest. Why finest?
Well, he saw it as having this incredible literary power, this symbolic richness for the soldiers. It captured something essential about that whole experience, you know?
Okay, that makes sense. So one of the first published versions, and one of the most horrifying, it's from a memoir called The Squadroon by Arthur and Arthur Holm Beeman, published in 1920.
Right. What did he describe?
He talks about being on the Somme marshes early 1918 and seeing German prisoners just vanish, gone.
Vanish. How?
He was warned the area was peopled with wild men, these deserters from all different armies living underground. He described them like ghouls among the moldering dead.
Ghouls.
Yeah, coming out at night to plunder and to kill. And the detail that really sticks with you is him saying at night you'd hear inhuman cries and rifle shots mixed with the snarling of carrion dogs.
Oh, that paints a picture of pure savagery. Not just survival, but something broken, dehumanized.
Totally. It really reflects that extreme environment, maybe the fear of what the war itself could turn men into, ghouls and wild men.
So that's one angle.
What else? Then there's a 1930 novel, Behind the Lines, by Walter Frederick Morris. This one gives you more of a sense of the physical space they lived in.
Okay.
The main character, he's a deserter, and another deserter leads him underground. And the description is just so vivid. A low and narrow tunnel, rotting timbers. It's half blocked with falls of earth. Indescribably dirty.
And the smell.
Yeah, the smell. A musty, earthy, garlicky smell, like the lair of a wild beast.
So, still animalistic, but maybe more focused on the grim reality of hiding out.
Kind of. His guide, Alf, says they scrounge for food and, sometimes live like perish and fight in cocks, which
Yeah.
suggests, well, grim survival, but functional. He also mentions they mostly works in pairs.
Okay, so that shifts it slightly.
Right.
Not just lone ghouls, but maybe small groups, pairs, focused on the gritty basics of staying alive. Still desperate, but with a kind of strategy.
Yeah, a different shade of desperation. Then Sir Osbert Sitwell, in his autobiography from 1948, Laughter in the Next Room, he remembers Armistice Day, 1918.
What was his take?
He called it the sole internationalism of the war, these deserters hiding out in caves and grottos. He saw them as cowardly but desperate, like bandits from old stories.
Bandits, so predators.
Yeah, basically. The rumor he recalled was that they'd come out after battles to rob the dying of their few possessions, things like boots or iron rations, and then just leave them dead.
That's incredibly bleak, taking from the dying.
It is, and the most chilling part of his memory. It was the belief, maybe just a rumor, that the army couldn't deal with them during the war,
Damn.
and that in the end, they had to be gassed.
Gassed. Wow. Does the source say if there's any truth to that? Or is that just part of the legend's darkness?
The source presents it more as Sitwell's memory of the rumor, like that was the kind of grim ending people imagined for these figures. It seems more like a reflection of how dark the legend got, rather than a confirmed historical event.
That makes sense. Legends often pick up those extreme final details, don't they?
Yeah. And one more account, from a novel this time, Reginald Hill's No Man's Land from 1985. It's got this really powerful scene.
Okay.
Some British and German deserters are being chased, and they run right into this big group, like 40 deserters, mostly Australians, who actually attack the military police chasing them.
40 of them. Attacking the MPs.
Yeah. And Hill gives these great descriptions. A wild-looking gang in dirty, ragged clothing, unkempt hair, unshaven faces, but very well-armed.
So organized.
Seems like it. He describes them swarming out of nowhere out of the bowels of the earth, reinforcing that underground idea, calls them scruffy, rugged, and wild-looking, more like a bunch of pirates, even mentions a big brute nigh on 7 foot tall.
Huh. So that version adds the idea of, like, actual numbers and organized resistance almost. Not just pairs scavenging, but a real band fighting back.
Exactly, like a defiant, dark, alternative society formed in that wasteland, a gang of pirates living underground.
Okay, so these accounts, Beeman, Morris, Sitwell, Hill, they paint this picture of ghouls, desperate survivors, bandits, even organized gangs, all pretty dark reflections of the war's dehumanizing effect.
Right, but here's the twist. that wasn't the only way people interpreted this legend.
Oh, how else could you see it?
Well, much later, James Carroll, writing in the International Herald Tribune in 2006, he looked back at this legend and saw something completely different.
Okay, a modern take. What did he see?
Carroll didn't see ghouls or bandits. He interpreted the story as suggesting these deserters had formed a kind of third force. Survivors, yeah, at home in the caverns, maybe dozens, maybe hundreds.
Right.
But the key difference for him, he saw them as human beings caring for one another no matter what uniform they were wearing.
Caring for each other. Wow, that's a total flip.
Isn't it? His symbolic take was that these figures were almost like angels, taking care of those who had fallen.
Angels in no man's land.
Yeah. Acting as a sane alternative to the insanity of war, finding this radical underground humanity and mutual support right in the middle of the slaughterhouse.
So one legend, but two completely opposite interpretations. Ghouls preying on the dead or angels caring for the fallen. That's fascinating.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Which brings us back to the source's overall analysis. What does this whole legend, with all its variations, actually mean?
Right. What's the symbolic weight here?
Well, the source argues that the legend, whether you see devils or angels or just desperate survivors, is extremely rich in symbolic value. It wasn't just a spooky story, it had a deeper psychological job to do.
Which was?
It tells us a lot about how people tried to process the unspeakable reality of no man's land. The legend is a way for us, even now, a century later, to be reminded of the sheer madness, chaos, and senselessness of all the horrors of war.
And the different versions, the ghouls versus the angels.
They probably reflect the different ways soldiers coped, right? Some maybe saw only the savagery the war unleashed. Others perhaps clung to a desperate hope that some humanity could survive, even underground, even by rejecting the war itself. It was a way to build a narrative around something that basically defied narrative.
Yeah, trying to make sense of the senseless. So why should you, listening to this now, care about some old WWI legend?
Because it's not just history. It shows us something really fundamental about how people react in extreme situations. These brutal, desperate conditions, they don't just create danger, they create myths, they create folklore. It's how people try to understand, to process trauma, to find some meaning through telling stories.
And it underlines just how long-lasting the psychological impact of war is, right? Shaping these stories, these legends that echo for generations after the fighting stops.
Exactly. Long after the trenches are gone.
It's a really powerful reminder that even the most awful landscapes can become, well, fertile ground for our deepest fears, but also maybe our most hidden hopes, all tangled up in these haunting stories.
So yeah, we've gone from the mud and the wire and the reality of no man's land, all the way to this powerful, often really gruesome legend of who might have been living down there.
And even landed on that much later, almost angelic interpretation.
Right. And the main thing to remember is this legend, it wasn't just made up out of thin air. It grew directly out of those unbearable conditions, out of the mental strain of just trying to survive that environment.
It was a response, a
Right.
psychological, cultural response to trench warfare.
So here's something to think about. How these places of extreme stress, extreme horror, they don't just break people. They can also forge something new, maybe unsettling forms of community, strange ways to survive, and this powerful folklore that ends up reflecting, well, the darkest parts of us, but maybe also sometimes the most unexpectedly human parts too.